Good afternoon, everybody from Berlin, and welcome to this online event that has been co-organized by Wiley and by the company WIP, who is organizing the WCPEC-8 conference later this year. So we warmly welcome you to this event on the topic of open research and how it specifically can help you to maximize and optimize your publication impact, as well as more globally to solve the challenges that we all face in the current environment regarding energy needs, and specifically to solve them using photovoltaics. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Stefan Hildebrand. I'm one of the editors who founded the journal Solar RL. And behind me in the background, you see the cover of the current edition, the May issue of the journal. That is in fact the first issue, the first collaboration with the EU PVSEC conference series. It's a special issue with contributions that were presented at last year's conference. So, and we will tell you in the following a little more about our collaboration and the publication landscape in photovoltaics in general. But let me first introduce to you also my co-moderator this afternoon. This is John de Gregoria, who is also online. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone from Munich. Thanks, Stefan. Well, my name is John de Gregorio. I'm head of unit of scientific services and cooperation in WIP, who is the organizer of the EU PVSEC and this year the WCPEC, the World Conference in Photovoltaics. We have the occasion today of starting a series of side events that will complement the official program of the conference, which will take place in September, as Stefan already mentioned. We have a very interesting session this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to hear what our speakers had to say in this really hot topic. We hope that will solve many open questions on open access for many of our participants. And I will just take the chance before I'm giving back the mic to Stefan to let everyone know that can place their questions in the icon below in Q&As. We will dedicate some minutes at the very end of the session. We will go through all the questions. So please, instead of using the chat, please use the window on Q&As. And yeah, that was it from operations. Stefan, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John, for your introduction and the details. Now let's come to the agenda of this afternoon. After our opening, we'll have a number of speakers here who are experts in certain aspects of the publication process, as well as, of course, on John's side regarding the conference and our collaboration and the publications that are associated with it. So Torben, as the first speaker, will give a broader overview about open research, its origins, and the foundations. This will be followed by one of our editor colleagues, Carolina, who will speak specifically about latest trends in photovoltaics and energy publishing. Then next in line, we'll have our colleague John Ulrich, who will then provide more practical guidance for authors. What are best practices? How can you secure funding, in particular for open access publication? Brian Johnson will give a talk about how to respond to the need for sustainability. he will introduce especially a new journal in our portfolio that addresses this question. Yeah, and after that, I will hand back to John again, who will present a practical case of the EU PVSEC and WCPEC this year. So the publication of photovoltaics conference papers in various journals. And as already mentioned, please prepare your questions, put them in the chat, and we'll collect them during the talks. And then hopefully we'll have enough time to answer all the questions at the end of this session. So then I would say we should not lose more time. I'm stopping my presentation here and would like to hand over to Torben. And this was actually wrong because I still need to introduce him in the next slide. So just back to the next slide. So this is Torben's presentation on open research. Torben is also a Wiley employee working in our Weinheim office. He is the associate product manager in the marketing, responsible for research and portfolio marketing in the area of our journals. So, but now back to you, Torben. Please move on with your presentation.
Thank you very much. I'll start sharing my screen. So hope that you can see my slides. If not, please let me know. Yeah, thank you, Stefan and John, for the introduction, and welcome also from my side to everybody to the workshop today. I think it's a great idea to have a workshop like this on a topic that is, I think, really important, but also quite a fascinating one. So before we go into all the nitty-gritty and all the details of what steps you need to take to make your work open access and what journals you might want to consider when you publish, and all of these details that that the other presenters will talk about, I'd like to take just a moment to look at the big picture and reflect on how the idea of open access originated and how it keeps unfolding. But also ask the question, why should we even care about it, right? How does it make a difference for someone who's working as a researcher today? So certainly in the last couple of years, we have seen a lot of change in how research findings are documented, processed, published, disseminated, shared, and in the end, again, consumed. So the whole research communication cycle. And I would say that this change is, in fact, enormous. So I brought you a few photos here from different periods of time. John Wiley and Sons, the publishing company I work for, started as a print shop in Manhattan in 1807. So that was roughly 200 years ago. And next to it, there's an advertisement from a German publishing company called Verlag Chemie, or VCH. It's from 1921. And that later became part of Wiley. So that's about 100 years ago. I don't know if you can spot this on the advertisement, but one of the journals on there is actually still famous today, a chemistry journal called Angewandte Chemie. And the other two photos are from 2001 and 2019. And I would argue that that research communication has changed more profoundly in those circa 20 years between those two photos than it has in the 200 years before. And the reason is, of course, the advent of the computer and the internet and all the digital technologies that followed. These technologies enable us to store practically limitless amounts of information and allow us to access it instantly and from wherever we may be. So what if all our scientific knowledge was stored and accessible in this way. This is essentially the idea that inspired the early proponents of open access. And this was during a time when almost all of the research literature consisted of printed journals and books stored in university libraries. So the photo in the upper right-hand side is of the Budapest Open Access Initiative. That was a group, and they met at a conference in Budapest and wrote a manifesto that became one of the founding documents of the open access movement and also popularized that term. So let's pause here for a moment to think about the definition. What does open access actually mean? So we can take it word by word, and I'll start with the second one, access. Access to what? Well, first, it's access to research literature, not any other kind. And second, it's always implied that this refers to digital documents available online, not physical ones where that term really can't properly be applied. And that research literature usually comes to us as peer-reviewed articles in academic journals. However, it doesn't have to be only that, right? For example, there are more and more open access books these days. And what does open mean? First of all, it means free of charge. Nobody pays anything to read this literature, and that's the most important part. But it can imply more than that. We could also use the word unrestricted. Unrestricted in the sense that there are little or no restrictions as to what you may do with the publication. Not just read it, but also download it, make copies of it, as many as you want to, redistribute it, and even reuse it. So this is a point where different definitions of open access can diverge a little bit, and then it depends on which philosophy or institution or organization you want to follow with the definition. So I would say, in other words, open access is unrestricted access to research literature. Now, what's so great about that? Why is that such a compelling idea? First of all, it's good for science itself. The easier and faster that scientific information can circulate, the better for scientific progress. We are still far away from a world where all research is open, but we all got a first taste of it and witnessed the extreme speed at which research can operate under such conditions. And I think you all know of which example I'm thinking of here. It's of course the research into COVID and the rapid development of COVID vaccines. So this is not just a theory, right? It's something that really affects all of our lives. But open access is also a way to address inequality when it comes to who has access, because it doesn't matter where you are in the world, how well funded your university is, everyone has the same level of access. And you don't even have to be affiliated to any institution at all. So if it's such a great idea, we should expect that as soon as the technology is ready, everything flips to OA, right? Well, it's a bit more complicated. And this is what you can see on this slide. It shows the global research output of the last 20 years and how much of it was open access. So that's the colored segment of the columns compared to the gray ones. And for now, you can just ignore that there are different colors and different types of open access. We'll come back to that later. But the point here is that it's really obvious that the share of open access is quite low at first, and then it slowly starts to increase, but it's a really fairly slow pace. And it only starts to pick up around 5 years or so ago. And still today, we haven't reached even 50% of open access. And here's another way of looking at the same trend. This is the share of open access articles in Wiley journals over the past few years. And you can see it's still far from being 100%, but you can also see how much it has started to rise. And we should also have in mind, and you can see the numbers here, that even a small increase in percentages can mean a big difference in absolute numbers. So you can compare here 2018, under 25,000 articles open access, and then in 2021, over 70,000. So why does this take so long, this transformation? We're dealing with a very complex web of relations between institutions like universities, libraries, societies, publishers, authors, readers, research funders, and many others. So that does take time to change a system like that. But I want to single out one factor, and that is the fact that in an open access system, authors are faced with an additional challenge and burden when it comes to publishing. And that is the fact that the vast majority of open access journals charge the authors to pay a so-called article processing charge, or APC, for every article. This is the case for the pure open access journals, those who publish exclusively OA articles. And this is also the case for the so-called hybrid journals, which have OA and non-OA content side by side. So both of them charge authors this fee, but not every author has the funds, to cover it, or they don't want to spend it. And there is this extra hurdle and deterrent there. And I think that's simply one of the reasons why many authors kept publishing the way they always did, instead of opting to switch to open access. And we saw different initiatives to speed up the transformation. For example, changes in policy on the side of research funders. Many started to mandate open access for any research they funded. But the biggest game changer, I would argue, is what we call the transformational agreements, because they take that burden of the APC away from the authors on a large scale. And I think when we enter that time period, when these take effect, that's when we see the real turning point where open access really starts to grow. You'll hear more about these agreements from John, so I'll stop here and finish with just one last question. Right, we said open access is good for science and for society and so on, but what if we look at it from the perspective of an individual author? How does it make a difference then? A lot more people can read someone's article, but do they actually do it? And there's a project going on at Wiley to answer exactly that question. They are monitoring, analyzing this kind of data. And I want to show you the result here. And this is my last slide. So this is a comparison of the performance of open access articles compared to those that are not open access. And you can see the difference. The open access articles are read 3 times more, cited 50% more, have an almost 3 times higher odd metric score. So aside from all the idealism involved in this movement, there are really clear advantages for every author. So I'll stop here and hand over to the next presenter, but I'll be back during the Q&A and look forward to answering any questions you might have. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Torben. I think this was quite amazing to see how much, the amount of increase in the scientific output and publication output has been, especially over the last 10 years. I also think that probably in the future, we'll see more the situation that open access output will rise further, but possibly closed publications will more or less, at best remain stable, but probably will also decline with time. So I think this is a development that is probably going to accelerate even further in the coming years. Yeah, let's move on in our agenda. The next speaker is Carolina, colleague of mine at Wiley WCPEC in Berlin. She is also one of the editors in the team of Solar RL, but she has also been working for a number of years on our broader scope energy journals, most notably Advanced Energy Materials, as well as the newer journal Advanced Energy and Sustainability Research. So she's an expert in this field and in the publication scene, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you about the publication trends in photovoltaics and energy.
Thank you, Stefan. Let me share my presentation.
Sure.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the latest trends in photovoltaics publishing at Wiley. So just a little introduction. So as Stefan said, my name is Carolina. I've been a Wiley editor since 2008. I have a scientific background. I studied chemistry in Brazil, and I have a PhD in chemistry from the University of Melbourne. I've worked in different journals within our portfolio over the years. I've worked in our material science journals, but also in our physics journals, sometimes in our polymer journals. I have over 10 years experience in publishing. I was there when print was still important and where open access wasn't a trend. So I'm gonna try and give a little bit of an overview of what I've seen, how the portfolio has changed and where we are at the moment. So the way I've structured my presentation is first, I'm gonna present our energy portfolio and show how it has adapted to the new publishing landscape. And then I'm gonna show you our main, some of our titles within a portfolio that fit photovoltaics and this area. All right, so this is our energy and sustainability portfolio. I've divided them into the two groups that we have. As Torben mentioned, we have hybrid journals, which are journals that were initially subscription only. So they were all papers published within the subscription model, but with time they've started publishing also open access. So we have a mix of both open access and subscription papers. And some of these journals are Advanced Energy Materials, which is our biggest energy title, but also Advanced Sustainable Systems, Solar RL, Energy Technology, and Progress in Photovoltaics. And then more recently, we launched some titles that are fully open access. So they only publish open access papers. Our main titles in this energy and sustainability portfolio are Global Challenges and Advanced Energy and Sustainability Research. So how did we get there? Back in 2008, when I started working at Wiley, our journals were all print, and they all had an additional electronic component. So everyone still read our print journals. Most, if not all, subscriptions were paper and digital. We had very few subscribers that only had the electronic version of the journals. Our main title was Advanced Materials was turning 20. We had three main journals in our material science portfolio, which were Advanced Materials, Advanced Functional Materials, and Small. And then we had a small physics portfolio and a small polymer science portfolio, but these three were our main journals in material science. All our titles were subscription only. So we published in the subscription model, and there was a paywall, so papers got published, and to have access to the content, you had to be a subscriber or be part of an institution that had a subscription. The field of energy within material science, physics, and chemistry was growing at a strong pace. We could see that more and more of the content in our broad scope journals was in this area. There was a clear need for a high quality journal for this community. So in 2010, we launched a special section within Advanced Materials that was dedicated to energy topics. This special section was immediately a success. We started publishing really good papers that got a lot of citations, was very successful. So in 2011, we launched a special issue from a special journal from this special section. So Advanced Energy Materials became a journal on its own, and it was the first sister journal to Advanced Materials. So this was when the portfolio started to grow. This is when we started launching journals to cater to specific topics within the material science portfolio. So as I said, we started with 3 titles, and then we launched Advanced Energy Materials. Now our portfolio is over 40 titles. We have journals covering all aspects of material science, physics, polymer science, sustainability, and energy. This is just sort of a brief overview of all the titles that we have within the portfolio. With time, print publication was slowly phased out. Most of our titles are not published in print. There are very few exceptions to this, but most of our journals are now online only. And our now online only titles were slowly converted to hybrid, which, as I said, means we are publishing both subscription content, but also open access content. So this conversion to hybrid gave our authors the option to publish their paper open access for an article processing fee. Our subscription journals all of a sudden were catering to both worlds. So people who wanted to publish free access and people who wanted free publication. So authors can choose within these journals what they want to, how they want to publish. Open access is increasingly the publication method of choice. We see within our portfolio that more and more people are choosing open access. I'll mention the example of Solar RL a little bit later on. But yes, given the transformational agreements and other things, we can see that the number of open access papers has been growing considerably within our portfolio. Of course, as I said, this trend, open access, it's not just in material science. This is no different in the energy community. There's more and more demand for openness in energy publishing. And while we kept our prestigious subscription titles hybrid, we have also started launching journals that cater for the open access option. So gold open access, fully open access journals for the energy community. The first title that we launched was Advanced Science, which is a broad scope journal. It was very successful. So we then launched Global Challenges and Advanced Energy and Sustainability Research, which are also both fully open access. Now I'm going to talk first a little bit about our hybrid titles and then about our fully open access titles. And then at the end, I'll give just a few hints on how to choose what's best for your publication, how do you choose the journal for your research. So our hybrid titles. Our main energy title is Advanced Energy Materials. As I said, it's been around since 2011. It started as a pure subscription journal, but now is a hybrid journal. It's an interdisciplinary premium journal on materials used for energy harvesting, conversion, and storage. The journal has an impact factor of over 29 and is published weekly. The editor-in-chief is still von Graberg. We have over 4,000 submissions a year, and the acceptance rate is about 16%. About 23% of the articles published in the journal are open access. This number has been growing consistently over the years. There was an increase of about 54% since last year. So we can see that this number is definitely growing. And this is, of course, because more people want to publish open access, but this has also been helped, as Torben said, and as John, I think, is going to talk about later as well, because of our transformational agreements, which take the burden off the authors and sort of give them an opportunity to publish open access without having to pay for it themselves directly. So we've definitely seen things grow. Another good example is Solar RL. It covers all areas of solar energy conversion. The editor-in-chief is Anna Troger. It has an impact factor of about 8.5 monthly issues, but from next year, we should see a frequency increase. We have over 1,000 submissions a year. About 20% of the published articles are open access, but there was an increase of over 100% since last year. And we can see this as well consistently over the years growing. Advanced Sustainable Systems is slightly different in topic. So it's still publishes a lot of photovoltaic content, but it's an interdisciplinary journal on systems, solutions, technologies, and applications for sustainable living. So it publishes photovoltaics, but from a sustainable side. The editor-in-chief is Lulu Ma. The impact factor is 6.2. It also has monthly issues. It publishes about 25% open access. And again, we've seen an increase of over 30% since last year. Energy Technology is a journal that covers technical aspects of energy processing engineering from different perspectives. The editor-in-chief is John Ulrich, who will give us a talk later on about open access and the transformational agreements. The impact factor is 3.6. It has monthly issues and publishes over 1,000 submissions a year. It has about 18% articles published open access. And finally, Progress in Photovoltaics. This is a slightly older, more established title within our portfolio. It's very well known for publishing the solar efficiency tables and literature surveys. The editor-in-chief is Martin Green. It has about a 40% acceptance rate, and this journal publishes about 48% of articles open access. So almost half of the articles published are already open access, and this, as I said, is a growing trend. Now a little bit about open access titles. As I said, Advanced Energy and Sustainability Research was launched about 2 years ago, so it's quite a new title within our portfolio. It was born from the need of, a lot of people have mandates which want them to publish in fully open access titles, so we decided to start this journal, which is fully open access, covering all areas of energy and sustainability. The editor-in-chief is Till von Greberg. It will get its first impact factor next year. It was first published in November 2020, so it's quite young. It has monthly issues and has about 200 submissions a year. And as I mentioned, it's fully open access, so it has an article processing fee of 2,600 euros. And the other title that we have in the portfolio, which is completely open access, is Global Challenges. It's a slightly different focus because, as the title says, it focuses on topics that are global challenges. So it also covers energy and photovoltaics, but in addition to that, it covers food and water safety, sustainability, climate, and other topics like that. The editor-in-chief is Mara Stafilani, and the impact factor is 3.8. It also has monthly issues, and it has about 150 submissions a year. So as I said, we have a huge portfolio. We have hybrid journals, we have open access journals. How can authors choose where to publish their papers, or what's the best option for them? So here are just a few key points that I think are very important when selecting a journal for your manuscript. I think it's important to honestly assess the importance, impact, novelty, and scope of the work. A lot of people focus on impact factor, and I think that shouldn't be their main decision point. I think the community that you want to reach and really the readership that you want to reach depends on the journal that you pick. So I think that should be the main concern. Is your journal of choice hybrid or fully open access? Are you and your institution covered by a transformational agreement? So would you have to pay for open access yourself, or can you get it funded through your institution? How can open access increase the visibility and availability of your work? As Torben showed, papers that are published open access usually get better visibility, better citation, more attention, and it's just more easily read by your peers. So that could be important in your decision-making. Another topic is how important is speed of publication. So different journals, the bigger journals might have a slower speed in publication. So it's important to think about how fast you want to publish your paper. What is the scope of your candidate journal? Sometimes for certain work, broad scope journals can be best, but if you want to really reach the more specific audience within your community, it might be better to choose a more specialized journal. And who reads your candidate journal? When you think about the journal where you want to publish, do your peers read that journal? Are you going to reach the people that you want to reach by publishing in that journal specifically? That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your attention. We'll have questions at the end of the session, so I look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carolina, for giving us this overview about our journal portfolio, which, as the audience hopefully could see, is quite widespread in the energy field. Also for photovoltaics in particular, there are several options where to publish. And I think you gave potential authors quite good orientation about that. But please, if you have detailed question about that, put them in the Q&A. And of course, if there are specific questions, you can also always get in touch with the editors of the journal to answer specific points that you may have. Right, so I'm just quickly switching on my agenda slide again. So this was Carolina with the journal overview. And the next speaker in the program, if the PowerPoint allows me to move on, which it doesn't do at the moment. Yeah, there it is. Brian Johnson, a publisher in the area of chemistry journals in the Weinemar office of Wiley VCH, will give us another angle about publication options, more on the topic of sustainability this time. Namely, our journals have to adapt to the developments in these fields. And a new example for that will be presented by Brian, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Let me just share. Okay, is it good?
Very good.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Brian Johnson. I'm the executive editor of Applied Research, publisher of chemistry journals at Wiley VCH. So my scientific background is in chemistry, but I've also overseen journal portfolios in physics, material science, and mathematics. So I'll just start by saying that Wiley became a signatory of the UN Global Compact early last year. This is a voluntary commitment that Wiley will support the broader development goals of the United Nations, and it includes an annual submission of a progress report that describes our specific actions. As part of this, Wiley joined the SDG Publishers Compact. So this means that we support the 10 principles around human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, and specifically support the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. One of the principles says that we take action on at least one SDG, and we've identified goals where we can have the most impact. So for us, these are goals 4, 10, and 13. So coming back to journals, as publishers, we can position books and journals to inspire action on the SDGs. So we recently launched Applied Research. This covers a broad array of topics, from materials to chemistry and biochemistry, food science, applied physics and biophysics, sensors and biosensors, and engineering. The cover was designed with sustainability in mind. So the icons show, for example, wind energy, water, plants, global warming. And so if you take a close look, you'll see several other examples. The word sustainable is not actually in the journal title, but sustainability here is regarded as important or even imperative in the broadest sense. So the idea is that applications research is often aimed at addressing the world's needs. So our idea is now to incorporate as many aspects as possible early in the journal life, and then to develop these continuously. So what are we doing specifically? These are some of the aspects that we're looking to move forward on. So for example, we've already started an issue on, or it's called Research for Sustainable Society. And this issue, it's closely aligned with the Young Conference series. It's called the International Conference on Technologies for Smart Green Society, or the ICT-SGS. We've also taken first steps on starting a series of perspectives and interviews that are closely related to the SDGs. And one of these is called One World Engineering. This is about bringing sustainability into education policy, specifically for engineering students, so all types of engineering. We're also looking to start a series of running topical collections. And the idea is that these will be closely aligned with specific SDGs. So the icons in the lower right have boxes around some of them, and these are the ones that we've identified to really most closely align with the topics. And we're also looking to sponsor conferences that are related to sustainability. So, for example, we'll be sponsoring the IUPAC International Conference on Green Chemistry, which will take place later this summer in Athens. So my last slide already is how can you get involved? So there are many ways really, but yeah, one of them is to become an early contributor to applied research. Another one is you can reach out to us about any sustainability projects where perhaps your institute is looking for a journal partner to give visibility, give attention to this. You can also contact us about publishing a perspective or perhaps even an interview that is something around the SDGs. Or you can feel free to talk with us about any possible topical issues in areas of photovoltaics. So yeah, please get in contact with us by Twitter or LinkedIn. Dr. Soro is the associate editor of the journal and I think is on this call, or also by email. The journal address is at the bottom. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Brian, for introducing this new journal in our program. Yeah, we wish you a lot of luck with that and lots of success during the coming years. And yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah, the sustainability topic is, of course, ever more on the rise, and lots will happen in the near future there. Yeah, let me just show the agenda. I'm going back to the presentation, and we have now John Ulrich speaking. John is editor at WCPEC-8 in Weinheim, in particular for the journal Energy Technology, but also on several journals of our advanced portfolio, advanced functional materials, advanced energy materials, and advanced materials interfaces. And now in his presentation, we're coming to practical guidance to authors, best practices, and how to secure funding for open access. So it's your turn, John.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen here. Good. I think we're set. Yes. Sorry, one less. Good. Okay, so thank you very much, Stefan, for the introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you today. I'll be talking about open access transitional agreements, also open research concepts. So by way of just a little bit more introduction, I already received a nice introduction from Stefan, but I did my PhD in the United States at the University of Wisconsin on interface chemistry and interface chemistry of hybrid photovoltaic materials and devices. And then I came to Germany to do my postdoctoral work at the Fritz Haber Institute in Berlin from 2009 to 2011 in the Department of Chemical Physics with Hajo Freund on surface science for model catalysis. I started with Wiley in 2011. First as an editor for advanced materials and advanced functional materials, and then received the opportunity to launch a new journal in the area of applied energy called Energy Technology. I'm now the editor-in-chief of Energy Technology, and that also hold positions, as Stefan mentioned, with advanced materials interfaces, advanced energy materials, advanced functional materials. I'm also responsible for fuel cells as a journal publishing manager there for that externally edited title. And so I focus on the interface between energy and material science. So it's already been alluded to the different flavors of open access, or different colors or materials, but I can go through in a little bit more detail. First of all, we have gold open access. Here, there's usually an article publication charge that's applied. It could be paid by the author, or it could be covered by an institution or funder. The article is made free to read, download, reuse, and share immediately upon publication. And it's published under a Creative Commons license, which I'll discuss on the next slide in a little bit more detail. Green open access is kind of a self-archived open access, as they call it. It's usually made open access after an embargo period has been completed after 12 or 24 months. It depends on the agreement with the publisher and the funding agency, for instance, who may mandate green open access archiving. Bronze open access is usually a temporary type of open access where something has been set for a limited time for open access by the publisher. And in that case, there's no obligation for it to remain under open access, and it's often may revert back to subscription access after a time. Diamond or platinum open access is a sponsored type of open access where either the publisher or a nonprofit or other sponsor sponsors the open access, and it then can be permanently made open access with no article publication charge to the authors. The Creative Commons licenses, the most open or the most permissive type of license is the CC BY license. And this is, sorry, move this. So, and this is essentially a license where you can share the material, but you have to refer to the original source. So that's what the BY is by attribution. The CC BY NC allows it to be shared as long as it's not for commercial purposes. And CC BY ND refers to non-derivative. And in that case, if you mix, transform, build upon the material, then you may not distribute the material further. Looking at a map of open access policies around the world, you can see there's quite a variety. So looking at the first, going from left to right, colors here, the dark green, there are established green open access policy with some gold mixed in North America, parts of North America. So in Canada, the US, also in South Africa, India, China, and Australia, for instance, among a few others, perhaps. Gold OA policies. So you can see that there's quite a bit in orange that's concentrated in Europe. And then also some separate distinct agreements across the US that are represented by the stars there. Green, purely green OA policies in Central and South America, also in Russia and in some parts of Eastern Europe, among a few other countries. And then no designated policies. So you can see there are swaths of this in Africa and in the Middle East, primarily, among a few other countries. So something that has was a landmark event in open access publishing was the Wiley Project Deal Open Access Agreement, which was established in 2019, originally for 3 years with an optional 4th year. And so now we're in 2022, so we're in the optional 4th year. The 4th year option was taken by both sides, and negotiations are currently ongoing for a new extension to follow. So what this agreement is has essentially 3 hallmarks: publishing, reading, and partnership. And it helps to move publishing to a more open access business model, particularly within Germany. The partnership aspect has to do with some extra features of the agreement, including institute visits, the launch of a gold open access journal or 2, or a gold open access journal and another journal that has also been launched, as well as a symposium for early career researchers. Looking at the funding of the agreement, so within Germany in 2018, on the left-hand side, that's just prior to the establishment of the agreement, or the prior to it coming into effect, most of the funding was focused on license subscriptions. And then there were smaller amounts of funding that were dedicated towards gold open access, hybrid open access. In 2019, with the establishment of the agreement, this part of it went into effect. In the middle of the year, it started to transition to the in green portion, publish and read funding. So this is for publishing and open access for fundees in Germany. Then by 2020, this had transitioned fully over to publishing open access funding. And I'll go into the details here. This agreement essentially brought in a wave of further transitional or transformational agreements. They're sometimes called transitional deals or transformative agreements. And they're usually contracts between that are negotiated between institutions and publishers to help transition the business model of scientific publishing over a period of time from subscription access to a more open access model. And each agreement is unique, but there are a number of common elements, and there are two different types that I can point out that are worth talking about. The read and publish type of agreement. This is a good example of this is the JISC agreement, which is centered in the UK and the United Kingdom. And essentially in this case, there are two different pots of money, or two different pots of funding. One that is centered on reading subscription content, so as kind of as a subscription, and then a portion of the funding that's for publishing and open access. And then over time, as this agreement develops, the portion for reading becomes smaller, and the portion that's dedicated towards open access publishing becomes larger. And so this transitions in the direction of a more open access publishing model. Then there's the publish and read model. And this is a good example of this is Wiley's Project Deal open access agreement in Germany that I just described. And in this case, all of the funding is dedicated to publishing open access research, publishing open access articles. And then the reading of other articles that were not published with open access, published with a subscription model, comes with it for free, so to speak, included in the agreement. And so that's why that agreement is unique, or one of the reasons is because all of the funding, 100%, is dedicated towards open access publishing. And now today there are hundreds of different transitional or transformational agreements. Wiley is one of the leaders in this, as you can see, although there are quite a lot of other publishers that are also making progress on this front. Looking closer at the map, you can see that a lot of these transformational agreements are centered in Europe. And one reason for this is because of the Plan S initiative, which consists primarily of European funding agencies. And so it's been centered in Europe, some of this movement. And I can point out in particular that France on this map is still gray. And that's because this map is slightly outdated. Things move quite quickly. And just last week, Wiley reached an agreement with funders in France. And so this could now be changed to be blue there as well, covering quite a bit of Western and Northern Europe with transformational agreements. In the United States, it doesn't have a countrywide agreement along these lines, but instead has a number of separate agreements. Some are for separate universities, such as Johns Hopkins University. Some are for groups of universities, such as the Big Ten Coalition, which includes Indiana, Michigan, Northwestern, Purdue, Wisconsin, and a number of other universities primarily focused in the upper Midwest of the United States. Then there are also some from funding agencies. So for instance, the United States Department of Energy might be of particular interest to this group. Then in Asia, we've also made a lot of progress there. So we have agreements in place in Australia, in New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea, and looking forward to further progress there as we go on. And so now we have more than 58,000 articles published worldwide under transformational agreements. And there are a number of places where we have negotiations that are ongoing, including on this map, Egypt and Portugal and Mexico is listed here. I actually, as mentioning again, that these things are moving very quickly. I just saw a message come through during this event that we've reached an agreement in Mexico as well. So real-time update there, I guess, as well. So we are continuously making quick progress on this. So to fill the gaps in this map, there are some places that do not have funding available for open access, publishing open access research. So particularly lower and middle income countries around the world. And so the organization Research for Life is made to help fill this gap. They provide automatic waivers and discounts on article publication charges for authors accepted to publish in our fully open access journals. And Wiley is a partner in this with Research for Life. And so this helps to fill the gap and make it so that everyone who wants to publish open access hopefully will have the opportunity to do so. It's worth mentioning just briefly as well that Wiley has been very proactive in waiving publication fees and making content freely available in Ukraine, so to help support them in their difficult time right now as well with the conflict there. So how do you make your work open access? How do you actually go through the steps of publishing it? I can take you through a few details there just to take some of the mystery out of this and show you how easy it is. So the first step in the case of a hybrid journal, once again, a hybrid journal being the majority of our journals that give the option for publishing in either open access or a subscription model. The first step would be to submit it, have it undergo peer review, and have it become accepted. If it's accepted for publication, then going to Wiley Author Services, looking up the article, you can look for a message from the institution or funder. Here in this case, it says, congratulations, that your article is eligible for sponsored open access, and you can select open access at no additional charge. Then you're asked to confirm some information that you may have provided upon submission with your work, but it's important to confirm once again to make sure that you to confirm eligibility. So you can confirm your funders. In this case, they are confirming the German Research Association, the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, as one of their funders. Step 3, confirm your affiliations. Here in this case, they are selecting the Max Planck Society as one of their affiliations. And then you can select open access once again. So yes, make my article open access, and it will send a message to your institution to request approval for the funding for that open access, as you can see here. And the last step is that you will, if approved, then your work will be immediately made open access under a Creative Commons license and be free to share, read, download, etc. If that request from your institution was for whatever reason denied, then you will be sent a message to ask you to provide alternative funding for this open access publication. A few notes worth mentioning on some details on this. So first of all, the designated corresponding author and their affiliation is what is decisive in determining the eligibility. So this could be important, particularly for collaborative works where you have authors from multiple countries, from multiple funders, from multiple universities. So it's the designated corresponding author who is decisive in that case. Be sure to register for author services with the same email address that you used when submitting your article. If you don't select open access upon publication, it depends on the specifics of the agreement that you have with the funder, or that we have with the funder, whether whether it's possible to retroactively change it to open access after the fact. And so it's better to select the option that you want to begin with, rather than waiting and refer to the details of the policy for later in other cases. For gold open access journals, the process is very similar. It's only slightly different in the case that the decision for publishing open access or not is moved up a bit earlier in the process, because upon submitting your work to that journal, you're already committing essentially to publish your work in open access. So a couple of those steps are moved up earlier in the process. Okay, so open science and open research. This is the second topic of my talk. And there's a lot of, so this is a journey, and I can give you a snapshot essentially of our progress so far. So here is the definition of open research, where I quote from the European Commission. I can read it out. That open research is a broad term covering the many exciting developments in how science is becoming more accessible, efficient, democratic, and transparent. This open science revolution is being driven by new digital tools for scientific collaboration, experiments and analysis, which make scientific knowledge more easily accessible by professionals and the general public, anywhere at any time. And so that shows, so open science, open research, they're used relatively interchangeably in this context, but open research is probably a bit more of an inclusive term. The three pillars of open research are open access, which we talked about already, but I'll review some of the highlights there on the coming slides. Open data and open practices. Open practices helps facilitate trust and accountability in other parts of the research practice, including collaboration, recognition, rewards. And so I'll cover each of these three coming up here in the next few minutes. As far as open access makes research outputs freely available to read, download, and share. And Wiley has more than 230 fully open access journals, so gold open access journals. And over 90% of our subscription journals offer the open access option. So again, the term hybrid journal, where you have the choice either to publish open access or with subscription access. So through initiatives such as our transformational agreements, we're helping to move the business model to a more open access based model. And it's worth mentioning that that these transformational agreements also do allow the public, the fundees essentially who participate in this agreement to have access to subscription content as well. So they essentially get their subscription access in addition to being able to publish in open access. Open data, which I mentioned before. Essentially, open data is governed by the FAIR principle, where FAIR is an acronym, stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And so when researchers make their data fair, they're showing the world that they're working transparently, reproducibly, and it helps build their own reputation, encouraging reuse and citation of their work. And there are 4 different levels of open data policy. One is encourages open data, expects open data, mandates open data, or mandates open data with peer review. Currently, of the Wiley journals, most are at the expect data sharing level, and 63 of our journals have moved on to the mandate data sharing level. What does this mean in practice? If I can show visually on this table, going across the top, there's data availability statement is published. And then there's data has been shared and data has been peer reviewed. And whether each of these 3 things is optional or required is what determines the policy. So most are in the second in blue, expects data sharing policy of the Wiley journals currently. And 63, as I mentioned, of our journals are at the mandates data sharing policy, where they require both the data availability statement as well as sharing the data. And so we are moving with time further down on this table and pushing to develop our journals in this way. Open practices was the third pillar. And there are a number of things to go through on this. And I'll go through them very briefly, each one, but there are quite a few interesting initiatives, I guess, on this. Open practices help build trust within academic communities, and so that's why they're valuable. One type of initiative is the registered report article format. And what this does is it's essentially a process for having research methodologies peer-reviewed prior to actually performing the research. And the best methodologies can be pre-accepted for publication in a journal. And this allows the author to be more open in interpreting and presenting their results for the final publication, because they would have guaranteed acceptance upfront of their work once they've gathered the data. Preprint servers, uploading the submitted versions of works to reputable preprint servers such as Authoria, ChemArchive, among others, is something that Wiley both approves of and encourages. And this allows earlier sharing, citations, and collaboration opportunities for the work. And it can often be submitted with just a few extra clicks to a peer-reviewed journal from the preprint server. And so there have been a lot of developments there. Transparent peer review is essentially when peer reviewers' reports, author responses, and editor decisions are published alongside the article, where the peer review report could be signed or left anonymous, depending on the choice of the reviewer. And it increases openness and trust in the peer review process, creating recognition as well for the work done by the peer reviewers. Center for Open Science badges. This helps showcase which researchers are taking advantage of transparent options in open practices. And so this is a nice way to be able to show this openly. The ORCID ID or the ORC ID is something you're probably familiar with, because the majority of Wiley journals require it for submission to the journals. So this is something that helps unambiguously identify researchers and also make it easy to collect and share research accomplishments, as well as success in funding. And then there's the contributions role taxonomy, or credit by acronym. It's essentially a set of 14 standardized author rules to help insert openness into the authorship process and define some of these rules. So it's a big improvement over first author, second author, last author, and making assumptions based upon that, for instance. It's worth mentioning at this point, natural sciences, because this is a particularly progressive, newer journal that Wiley has been publishing, particularly progressive in the terms of open research principles. So it says here, so emphasizing open data and open peer review concepts. It's also a gold open access journal, so embracing open access in that way. And so this journal has it was launched last year and is a collaborative effort between the Max Planck Society as well as representatives of Wiley, and as a part of the Wiley Project the Open Access Agreement in Germany, covering physical, chemical, and biological sciences. And the APCs, the article publication charges, are waived until the end of this year, and so through 2022. So there's the website at the bottom here, as well as you can find them on Twitter, so you can interact with them further and read more if you're interested about that. But this is a particularly noteworthy journal, as far as applying open research principles. With that, I can come to a conclusion for my part here. So open research principles are methods by which we can insert more openness and accessibility into each step of the research process, from formulating the idea to performing the research, to sharing the knowledge in a publication, and to searching for and discovering the reports of others. And so it's part of our role as publishers to help support researchers at each step of this process. And so thank you very much. I'll conclude here. If there are any questions, of course, I'm also available in the Q&A later with the others.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. I think you have nicely demonstrated here that, yeah, open research means much more than just making, PDFs of articles freely available on the internet. It is a much bigger, movement and real transformation also of the whole publishing industry. And you also mentioned that there are, many new agreements, essentially, almost every month, every week, which of course also means that for authors in various parts of the world, conditions are changing and new information needs to be distributed, and they need to learn and to know what conditions are valid in their specific environment. So once again, please feel free to ask questions today. Contact our editorial offices if you have specific queries regarding your own publications. There's also an author services team and a website, Wiley Author Services, that already provides lots of information about that. Okay, so now we are moving closer, literally closer to the conference. John, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have organized this session jointly, Wiley and WIP Renewable Energies. That is the organization, that hosts the conference, the EU PVSEC, the European meeting, actually yearly. I guess you can also tell us again why it is this year WCPEC instead. So what is the relation between these two events, and why is it held as a global meeting this year? So once again, warm welcome to the next presentation by John De Gregorio about the practical case of the publication of conference articles from EU PVSEC and WPEC in several journals.
Thank you, Stefan. Well, before starting my presentation, let me use the hat still of moderator to remind everyone that is willing to ask something that they can do already now. I mean, we will collect the questions, and the section will be at the very end. But so far, Stefan's and myself job on that was quite easy. So don't be shy and place your questions there.
Absolutely.
Having said that, let me share my screen. I hope you can see it. Well, as Stefan said, you might find that that you do not see the WCPEC in my presentation, the logo. Is because the World Conference is taking place every 4 years. Europe is proudly hosting the event in this edition, 2022 edition, after 4 years. Last time it was in Americas. The 3 main research photovoltaic conferences join together in one event, and is the event, the photovoltaic event. So we hope that we will be able to convince you to join us later in September in Milan. Having said that, well, my name is John De Gregorio. I said that before. WIP is the organizer of the EU PVSEC this year, as well of the World Conference, and we are as well editors of the conference proceedings. So here we have certainly some experience to share in these changing times. I think one of the most repeated words in this session was changes, and for us it was equivalent. The conference started already. This year is going to be the 39th edition, and it's happening every year. So as you can imagine, things have changed a lot during this time, and I'm going to explain you, or try to explain you a bit how our experience mainly related to the publication of papers from our side as editors of the EU PVSEC conference proceedings was. So let me start with the basics, which is what are in the end conference proceedings. Well, it's a written record of contributions, just a collection of academic papers that have something in common, which is that are presented during a conference. In our case, the EU PVSEC. From the perspective or the point of view of an author, is one of the many dissemination routes. From the point of view of the publisher, which is our case, can be internal or external if it's the same as the organizer of the event. In our case, we are, as I was mentioning before as well, we are publishers and editors together with the two chairs of each year's conference. The other important body of the conference proceedings are the editorial team, which is in charge of selecting and collecting the contributions, composing the publication, the book, determining the order, and producing other sections like the editorial, appendix, etc. Another thing that have in common all type of proceedings is that typically each paper is quite isolated from the others. Apart from the theme of the conference, there is no crossing topic or theme that is belonging to all of them. This is different to a journal. And then the publication speed, it really depends on the sector. In our case, is a few weeks, in the range of 3, 4, 5 weeks, but in other sectors can be even months. A bit of history in the EU PVSEC. We heard, or we learned, that Wiley has a lot of history behind them. For us, it's not so vast, but nevertheless, 38 editions of the conference, with 38 conference proceedings volumes published. It's quite remarkable. Only in the 14 years of online publications, I'm coming back to these changes that have been happening. We started from printing books into online and digital formats. Well, only during these 14 years, we have published more than 10,000 papers, apart from appendix and in some cases the presentations of authors that are interested in that. As I was mentioning before, the EU PVSEC conference proceedings are published in-house by WIP. I think this presentation is complementing very well the presentations that were offered before, because we were hearing the perspective of a journal publisher, and I think for all those researchers that are interested in disseminating their work, hearing what is behind the conference proceedings, and hearing what kind of the history was, and which are the various options that they do have, could be interesting. So what's mainly what are the differences between journal publications and conference proceedings publications? Well, both are publications, of course, but quite not the same. In the case of journal publications, we have typically longer processes of publication, implying a slower feedback from the audience for those reading or getting these publications. The work is usually complete and typically extended. We can see that are full, in most cases, full papers. Those papers are undergoing through a peer review process. Institutions traditionally give a lot of credit to peer review articles, and this is something that has a high value. And then typically the journal publications have a higher impact factor compared to conference proceedings publications. On the other side, we have the conference proceedings publications, which are quicker. The feedback is faster in general. The work presented can be complete or in progress. Typically the papers published are shorter. There is only a peer interaction, traditionally not a full peer review process, and not all institutions give full credit to conference proceedings publications. The reason behind is that those conference proceedings that are undergoing through a peer review are having a low impact factor. So here we can see that that we have some key elements that I was mentioning, which would be a quick publication, a fast feedback, peer review, yes, no, and how high the impact factor is. There are other components that should be considered, which are, as we have been hearing during this afternoon, the publication type. Is it open access? Is there a subscription? We have seen that there is a lot of changes going on nowadays and since well 10 years. But the challenge for an event or a conference organizer like us is, can you get all at the same time? Can you provide these services at once to all participants? On top, are all the needs of all authors the same? Well, the replies to those questions obviously are a clear no. The needs of authors are quite different from each other, depending the institutions they are representing, their backgrounds, the needs, the funding, etc. And of course, providing everything at the same time in just one publication is basically impossible. So 5 years ago, we were going through this analysis and seeing the challenges and the changes that the market was going through. We wanted to address or we wanted to adapt ourselves to the new times, and we wanted to do an update in our publications strategy. And the logic behind was, well, should we go into a full peer review process for the whole conference proceedings, trying to obtain a high impact factor by pushing hard in the market? How do we do? And the solution was not easy. I just can say it took a while to find a compromise, but we think that we found in the complementation of what the conference proceedings can offer and the journal publications can offer. And with journal publications, I'm referring to various types of journal publications. This way, we could address the needs or the various needs of our clientele best. So we decided to maintain a unique, comprehensive, quick, and open publication of the conference proceedings, not splitting it into several parts. One could be peer-reviewed, the other one could be quick. Could be a quick, not peer-reviewed publication. We decided to maintain the whole block together. Then, based on the long-standing collaboration with Wiley, we offer the possibility of journal publications for a number of papers. And here is where we found the challenge, since the needs of authors are different. Knowing the number, or this number, is the most complicated part. So we established a collaboration with different types of journals that complement each other and complement as well the conference proceedings. The review process is shared by the evaluation process of the abstracts. So there, in the conference, we have established a 200 plus amount of experts that are evaluating all the submissions and decide, apart from the acceptance or not of an abstract or a submission to the event, they evaluate and decide as well based on this evaluation and on the preferences of the authors to which journal a paper is proposed to. As well, we are underlining for all those authors intending to publish both in our conference proceedings and in the journals that they can do so. They can publish in both volumes, but of course the paper should be at least different, 50% different from each other. The path that most of the authors are following is, as I was mentioning before, like setting an intermediate step on their work, and this is what they are publishing in the conference proceedings, or they are deciding for a shorter version of the paper, and then the long one and the most complete and exhaustive one is presented to the journal. So here we established a collaboration not only with Progress in Photovoltaics. I think the collaboration is nowadays longer than 10 years, but as well with Solar RRL. Both of them are hybrid publications, but as well with EPG Photovoltaics, which belongs to another publisher, which is a full open access. And we believe that with this menu offered to all authors willing to participate in our conference, we address all their needs. And this dynamic process that started around 4 years ago will evolve in terms of fine-tuning even more the numbers, the number of journal slots that we are offering to authors, and as well adapting ourselves to these changing times in publications. Let me remind you that we can see each other. We look really forward to seeing you and welcoming you in the World Conference that will take place in Milan, in Italy, in September, end of September. And yeah, this is just the first milestone of a series of side events that we will organize for the event, and we look forward to welcoming you there. If you have any question, now is starting this section, I guess, Stefan.
Yes, thank you very much, John. We are also looking forward to seeing you and, of course, all the authors and presenters in Milan in September. Right, so we have indeed received questions. We still have a bit of time available for that. And perhaps, John de Gregorio, since you just spoke, there's a direct question to you. Or first, it's, thank you for the excellent webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. And the question is, I would like to know how to register for WCPEC. I haven't found anything about it at the website. What can you recommend, John?
Well, this is an easy question. Easy question to reply. The registration platform will be available very soon, already this week. So the reason why it was not found is because it was not published. But in the next days, it will be open, and it will be very easy via the user area of each EU PVSEC or WCPEC user can be reached very easily.
Very good. Is the program already available, or is it still possible to send abstracts?
The program is not yet published. Authors are notified, so everyone that was submitting a regular submission is able to know what he or she obtained. Late abstracts are still accepted, but those will be evaluated during the next weeks. So I encourage everyone that is willing to participate still in the event. We have saved some oral slots still for everyone that is interested in participating. Of course, the abstracts will be evaluated, but what I'm trying to say is that we have still some oral sessions for late abstracts that we hope to fill in with still late abstracts submitted.
Yeah, thank you, John. So I've looked through the questions that we received, and there is one, maybe going back to Torben, our first speaker today. Can you give an example why the reusability aspect of open access is relevant?
It's a good question. The example I can think of is if you imagine you're writing a bigger work, like, for example, like a PhD thesis or something like that, and you, for example, you are citing a lot of figures from many different articles as part of that work. and if you imagine that you would want to publish that, right, if these are not CC licenses on all these figures, that would mean that you would have to get permission for each and every one of these, which could be lots and lots of work and may not even be possible in all the cases, but it becomes really, really easy in an open access setting where they are published under CC licenses, and then you have that freedom to use them, and you just need to make sure that you have all your sources right, and you can go ahead and publish that work easily.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just looking through the questions. There's one that actually should go to Brian, who presented the new journal Applied Research. And the question is, the scope is limited to certain fields only, while the term applied could cover nearly everything, even psychology, for example. Why is the scope limited?
Yeah, so as we're just starting out, we wanted in the first phase to make sure that we have some synergies with our colleagues who are, in-house editor models, where we have a lot of expertise. That was one reason. We would have also needed to find a very large number of editors right at the start to cover all of the possible papers that would come in. So we needed to make a bit of a selection, but getting back to the topic here, we specifically chose the topics we did with the thought of also those are the most concrete ways we can bring sustainability topics in already in the early phase. So there could be some possibility to build on this later, but we wanted to have things that are relevant to sustainability.
Thank you. Yeah, and maybe one more question going back to open access and the journal. So maybe Carolina, you could answer that. John, maybe as well. So what is the difference between publishing open access in a gold open access journal? So these are the ones that are pure open access journals, and in a hybrid journal. So what's the difference?
So for the reader, there isn't a real difference. So it will be an open access manuscript, and they'll have full access to it without having to have a subscription to the title. So they just can go online and read it. So from that perspective, for the readership, it doesn't really make difference. For the author, it might make a difference depending on if they have to pay off their own pocket or if they're part of a transformational agreement. Some of those cover only full open access journals, and then they might get a discount for a hybrid journal. And some transformational agreements then cover also hybrid titles. So there's a slight difference depending on the transformational agreement. So in that aspect, it might make a difference for the author if they have to pay off pocket or if they can get it paid by their institution or their agreement. But other than that, for the readership, it's basically the same.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we, as far as I could see, we've covered most of the questions. Is there anything left, John?
I would like to. It's not necessarily a question. It's more a comment that I would like to place on the table for hoping for some comments from the other speakers, and it goes in. I was following the presentations, and I saw quite low a ratio of acceptance in certain journals that of course speak a lot on the quality of papers that are published, of course. No, but I wanted to comment and this is I guess I'm saying it with pride on our scientific committee. I think the acceptance ratio of papers that are coming from us in this case as papers that are presented during a conference is way higher. No? So I think we are talking about a percentage that is higher, I think, than 70% or even 80%, right? Stefan, I think maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, it's certainly in that range. I think the reason for that is certainly generally the high quality of the research that is being done. Yeah, in particular last year in the European PV community. So this year it will be global. So there will be even also interesting results also from other continents. Yeah, so and also of course the articles that are supposed to be considered for publication, yeah, both in solar RL and in progressive photovoltaics, they have of course been rated before, assessed before by the conference committees. They are, yeah, in that sense kind of pre-selected some of the best presentations of the conference. And so the experience we've made during the peer review process with the reviewers is that the reviewers certainly have critical questions, and they certainly evaluate the manuscript thoroughly, and this also leads to modifications and changes and improvements. But yeah, as you said, overall in most of the cases, or a large part of the cases, the final result was positive, and we were able to accept the articles. Many published open access also this year. So I think that's a good result overall.
Thank you, Stefan.
Okay, so I think we have already exceeded our time. So I'm switching to our goodbye slide. I would like to thank you all again. First and foremost, of course, thank our speakers for joining this session and for preparing and presenting their slides today. Once again, see you in Milan. The conference homepage offers information about the forthcoming event. Wiley Online Library similarly provides all the information about publishing. And if you have further questions regarding any of the topics that was covered here, for simplicity, I've put here the email address of the journal, Solar RL. But feel free to ask any questions, send it to us, and we will channel it to the respective journal or the respective person from the panel today. So you can be sure that we will respond to you and answer your questions. Yeah, thank you all very much again. Have a nice day, have a nice evening, and see you soon.